Now, today's topic is one that's very, very close to my heart, and I'll explain why. Today's topic is Let the Muscles Teach the Brain, how positive actions overcome a temperamental response. And by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, I'm actually getting my topics from Emmett, one of my favorite books in the whole world. Obviously, I don't stick completely to it, but I have to thank Miriam Adahan for really writing a book that gives me a great basis to work from. Now, why it's one of my favorite topics is because it's something that I went through a whole journey to really come to understand. And that was that I was originally an occupational therapist. And in those days, in the 1970s, it was very much, OT was very different to how it is now and how it's trained in Australia. And the thing about it was that we spent about 7 hours a day with patients. So, for example, when I did my internship in 1975 at Tara in Johannesburg, there were psychologists who would see patients once or twice a week for an hour, whereas us little OTs, and when I say little, we were all, 21 years old, running around, dragging people out of the wards who were depressed or out of their wards if they had some injury, and bringing them to our workshops, which were fabulous. And we weren't just diversional therapists. We actually did very scientific measurements, and we did activities to move the joints and so on. But at that time, what we did was sort of looked down on as just diversional and very sweet, and isn't it nice we keep people busy? And really, the psychologist, and it's at Tara, and the psychiatrist got a lot of the, if you like, the adulation and the status. Not for that reason, really, because of my health, I changed to psychology, and it was a fantastic decision. And then when I was training in psychology, it was all about, in those days, analysis, which was all about thinking. And we've actually spent the last 2 Shirim talking about our thoughts and how to manage our thoughts. And honestly, when I was training, there was a bit of disregard for behavioral psychology and things like that. So I was quite, I wouldn't say indoctrinated, that's too strong, but I was very much in that mode that what really counts is deep work and therapy and so on. And in my own head, maybe minimize the work I'd done as an OT. When in the 80s, cognitive behavioral therapy came along, and it talks about cognitions and behaviors. That's what it stands for, cognitive behavioral therapy, because there was an awareness that behaviors are just as important. So whereas cognitions, what we call an inside-out approach, if you change your thoughts, you will change the way you feel. Behaviors are the outside-in approach, where if you change your behaviors, you can change how you feel. And they are both of them valid. I don't know if I can say they're equally valid, but they are both really, really valid, and one should not look down on one or the other. There are times when it's enough just to change our thoughts. There are times, which I'm going to be talking about today, when it's enough to just change our behaviors. And we can do both, and we can vary it, but they are both important and they both have a place. Now, I heard Miriam Adahan talk. She came to Johannesburg in the early 1980s. And she gave a talk about, or someone asked her a question, and she was talking about depression. And she was saying how she had a patient who was depressed. He was a male, a religious male, and she told him, you need to get out of bed in the morning, you need to go and daven with a minyan, you need to socialize. And I have to be honest, this is confession time. I sat in that audience as probably quite a newly qualified clinical psychologist, a little bit, critical of the little OT. And I thought, that's really simplistic. I mean, if someone has depression, you don't just get them up in the morning. There's much more to it. Of course there is. But what has happened is that all the research now is exactly what she was saying, that a big part of treating depression, and if you go on the Black Dog Institute website, you will see they have all these diaries and things about setting a time to wake up, getting out of bed, getting outside into the sunshine, socializing, all the things that everybody now knows as sort of common knowledge. But in the 80s, it wasn't common knowledge. The belief was everything was about therapy and deep work, and it was belittled. So she was right, but really it wasn't her, it was Torah. And we have to be careful. And again, I'm always talking to myself. I'm not judging anybody because I know I've had these thoughts. We have to be careful not to go, oh, isn't Torah clever? Torah actually gets CBT, but that's completely the wrong way around. Torah always knew this. Torah has always taught us this. And there are times when psychology taps into it and we go, oh, you know, that's nice. Psychology is finally caught up. But it has never changed the eternal value of Torah, which has been to do action. And this is why I love it, because it took me a while to get there, but I see it more and more and more, that simple things like changing a behavior can make a massive, massive difference to someone's life. And it's also very helpful because what it means is that often you don't have to go for 6 years of therapy or 5 sessions a week or any of those things. You just have to change a little behavior and things can change in enormous ways. So it makes it also more accessible, but also for a lot of people just easier and happily. So you'll see how Torah has always spoken about action. And if you think about receiving the Torah, the first thing that the Jews said is Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do. Torah is all about action. And when we do these actions, it helps our mental health enormously. It's really, really important to value the actions that we do on a daily basis and realize the import that they have. So it says in Hilchas Deo, one should practice again and again the actions prompted by the proper attitudes. And these dispositions will then become firmly fixed in his soul. So if you want to change, you need to practice a disposition over and over. And this is something people who know me will know. I'll always talk about when you do something, it's practice and repetition to rewire your brain and to make sure it'll be lasting. So as an example for this, I'll give you first an example for children, but you'll see how it applies. So once, someone asked, I think the Rebbe, what do? They have a child who's not very good at sharing. And so the Rebbe said, well, what you need to do, let's say you have a party, is don't give everybody little packets of chips. Have one big packet of chips and get that child to give everybody some. And this action of giving and giving and giving will teach your child how to be more generous. So that's an example of an action that can make a huge difference in your life. So the same thing with you. If you struggle to be giving and you want to be giving, doesn't matter what you feel, just give and do it again and again. And by doing it, you will change yourself. There's also that concept, it's often told in a lot of Hasidic stories where people are collecting money. Like a great Rebbe would be collecting money and go from shtetl to shtetl and come across a rich person who would say, here, I can give you the whole money. And he would say, no, 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 everybody must give. Everybody must be part of this mitzvah. I'll take that, that's a great contribution. But everyone, we have to give and give to refine that part of ourselves. So whichever action it is that we want to change, whatever character trait we want to change, whatever we need to do it as an action, and we need to do it over and over, and that will actually become, as it says here, firmly fixed in your soul. Now, this above principle is extremely important for us all, because whenever you feel lethargic or gloomy or unloving, you overcome that negativity by doing something positive. There's a very famous story of Stephen Covey in one of his books where he was running a convention, or he was training at a convention, and someone came up to him and said to him, I don't know what to do. I've fallen out of love with my wife. And Stephen Covey said, love your wife. He said, what do you mean? I've just told you I've fallen out of love with my wife. And Stephen Covey said, what's the problem? Love is a verb. Just love her. And that's the thing. If you go through times where you don't really feel loving towards your child or your spouse or your friend, the best thing you can do is to give to them. Don't wait until you feel like giving. Don't try and talk yourself into it. Think of an action that you can do that will show love. And that's not the feeling of love, something that's kind or considerate or giving. Go out of your way for somebody, and that feeling will come. This is an outside-in approach. Give to the person you have a negative feeling for, and that will change your feeling. Love is a verb. Be loving, and you will become loving. Now, the same thing, if you're gloomy, put on a smile. We know that if you put on a smile, it will change the inside. Force that smile. Even if you don't feel like it, look in the mirror, put it on, walk around and greet everybody, and your mood will lift. It's as simple as that. If you are actually, very nervous or uncalm, act calm. And this can be a fun activity to do at home, and if you have kids at home, where you act calm. Calmness generates calmness. So what does that mean? It means that don't shout. Act as if you would like to be. Pretend someone is in the room that you respect. Would you be behaving like this if they're in the room? No, you'd be very calm and very nice and say all the right things. So do that, and you'll start to feel calm, because the outside fixes the inside. Confidence generates confidence. This is the same thing. A lot of people, they come for therapy and they say, I want to learn how to be confident. And the truth is, it doesn't come from talking about it. It comes from acting confident. And the more you have opportunities to act confident, you will feel confident. It always reminds me of, I used to love the movie The King and I. And she has that fabulous song at the beginning, and I used to sing it to my kids when they were young. Whenever you feel afraid, or whenever I feel afraid, I hold my head up high and I whistle a happy tune, and no one knows that I'm afraid. And she says at the end, and the result of this deception is very plain to see, because when I fool the people I fear, I fool myself as well. So this is the point. People can say fake it till you make it, comes from Torah. Be who you want to be. Act brave, act confident, and that will help you be brave and confident. The more you give in to your feelings and act that way, it becomes that's how you will become. Now, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter how you feel. The ideal is that if you want to be kind to someone, you feel kind and you're doing it from a good place. From a Torah point of view, the bottom line is the act. If you give charity, as an example, if you give money to someone, you don't really want to, but you have to, that's the ultimate. Be nice if you want to, but it's more important that you give the charity or give that person a lift or make that call or do whatever you need to do. That's more important than feeling right. If you do both, that's a bonus. Don't wait. A lot of people say, I want to be spontaneous. I want to wait till I really feel it. That's not the Torah way. Just do the right thing. There's also a concept, ki lo lishmo, bo lishmo. If you do the right things for the wrong reason, you will come to do them for the right reason. But either way, just do the right thing. Even if it feels forced, even if it feels insincere, you'll eventually lessen the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Now, this is one of the things that is really exciting about Torah that I love, and that is that there is a right way of behaving. There is a good way of behaving. There is a value judgment attached. The Torah tells us being kind and generous is better than being cruel and stingy. It's not like everything goes. No, there is a Torah way of behaving, and we all know it. It's not something that you have to read in a book. We all know that these are universal values. And so we can do what we know to be right, even if we don't feel like it. Sometimes you wake up in the morning, I just want a day to myself, and I'm sick of helping everybody. And that's okay. You can have those feelings, but get up and help everybody. That's more important. And again, I'm not minimizing. We all need time to ourselves and we all need therapy. All those things are true. But sometimes we just do the right thing because it is the right thing. And too many people will suffer if we don't. And it's fine to call a friend and whinge. But at the end of the day, even if you don't feel like it, you will feel good when you do the right thing. So what happens is we call this a positive muscular act. It's moving your muscles to do something positive. And this can override the mind's negativity. And why this is so important is it proves that you're not helpless. It proves that you're not fearful or inadequate as you felt a minute before. So when you just talk about something, it doesn't change how you feel. And this is the same thing with parenting. When parents think that if you just keep telling a child they're wonderful, the child will feel wonderful. No, it doesn't help. In fact, often it has the opposite effect. If you want a child to feel wonderful, give them something to do that they can feel masterful. And then when they see that they can do it, I did my own shoes, I helped with the vacuuming, I gave that tzedakah, whatever, the child feels good about themselves. So positive muscular act really builds confidence more than anything else. When you're feeling tired, which we call temperamental fatigue, when you've actually had enough sleep, don't go to bed. Get up and go for a walk. Exercise is the most amazing thing. And it's one of the, again, with the black dog, we talk about making sure that you get out in the morning and you exercise every day. And getting out in the morning, even if it's for 10 minutes in the sunshine, is very good for you. I just want to again digress and say one of my very good friends messaged me after last year. And she said to me in the nicest way, do I exercise? Anyone who knows me now, I do exercise regularly. And now that I'm exercising at home, I'm up to 6 days a week, which is absolutely fabulous. And I respected her for asking me because, and the reason I'm sharing it with you is I want you to know that I really try very hard that whatever I teach, I practice, and that it's coming from a place of self-knowledge, but also self-struggling. I'm not sitting here saying I do everything perfectly. I'm really not. But I do know that exercise changes your life. I do know that at 2 o'clock today, when I did an hour of exercise, my mood changed for the whole afternoon. I was so much more energized. Everything changes. So I am coming from that place, but I do want to reassure you, I'm not sitting here going, I've got it all right. Just like everybody else, I have my struggles. We all have our struggles. And that is why it's never about judging someone else or feeling inadequate, because we all are struggling with our own things. We're all at war. Our battlefronts might be different, but we're all at war with ourselves in some way. So I'm not coming from a place of arrogance that I know it all, but I do want to say that when I mention exercise, I do exercise, I do practice Emet, and I do try these things as much as anybody else. I believe in them really, very, very deeply. Do anything that requires self-discipline. If you're starting to panic, just breathe slowly when you tense. Just as go for a slow walk. Just plan your meals, do something organizational. Because often the only way to stop this anxiety or panic that you might be feeling is to get involved with something else. Now, we're not talking about just a distraction. That is also a tool. Sometimes you can distract yourself. This will help from a different point of view, that you feel masterful, that you're engaging your muscles, that you start to feel more in control. If you start planning a meal, you start feeling more in control. You're then more in control of what you can be in control of, which is your own little area. We all have our own little areas, our homes, our meals, our family. Because if we start thinking about the pandemic and the deaths and the world, we feel inadequate. The opposite of masterful, it's going to stir up the anxiety. So these are ways to get through where our focus is on building our own emotional strength and what we can and can't fix. It says in Sefer HaChinuch, minds are shaped by deeds. So as I was saying earlier with your trays, the more you do, the more you'll change yourself. It's not enough just to think something. You've actually got to action it. Now, if you tell yourself, for example, I can't look for a job until I have more self-esteem, you'll become less confident, because doing the things you fear to do is the opposite, will build confidence. We call it now exposure. And there's actually an interesting thing that they've shown is that when men apply for a job, they are happy if they fill 60% of the criteria. So they'll have a look at a job and they'll go, yeah, I can do this, this, and this, I'm going to apply. When women apply for a job, they go, oh, I can only do 90%, and they don't apply, but they go and study further. They go and do the next master's or the next degree because they feel inadequate. This is a particular female thing, and this is quite recent research. So the idea is, I saw on a blog somewhere, someone was saying, if you do 60 or 70%, just apply for the job. Don't wait until it's perfect. Don't overthink it. Don't actually think you've got to be perfect or have the right self-esteem. Go for things. Go for the gap. Build yourself. Take risks. We're not taking enormous risks, but put yourself out there, because fear and avoidance has the opposite effect. It increases fear, increases avoidance, increases feelings of low self-esteem. Don't say, for example, when she acts more loving, then I'll be nicer to her. That's a very common one. I always say people are always waiting. I'm waiting for the apology. I'm waiting for her to be nice to me. I'm waiting for them to invite us. Don't have a waiting mentality. What you want to do, you call. You go first. You be proactive. You show appreciation. Don't wait for someone else to show you appreciation. You show appreciation. Be the person you want to be, regardless of how other people are. Don't wait and wait for things to happen. It says in Strive for Truth, a person comes to love the one to whom he gives. When demand begins, love departs. Make demands upon each other and your happiness is at an end. So he talks a lot about this, and I think they talk about it a lot in marriage, that if you want to be loved, be loving. We call this the law of reflection. King Solomon says, as one heart, as when you look into the water, which we'd say today a mirror, as your face is reflected in the water, so one heart reflects another. If I'm warm to you, you will be warm to me. If I walk past you in the supermarket and stick my nose up and pretend I don't see you, you will feel it, and you'll walk past and pretend you don't see me. That is the law of reflection. So what happens is, if you have a marriage and you have one person going, I'm waiting for him to be more loving. I'm waiting for him to set up the date night. I want this from him and this from him and this from him, and he's not giving it. You're on a downhill spiral. But if you say, I'm going to give and I'm going to be loving, what will happen is your husband will be loving back. If you're loving to a family member, they will be loving back. Unless someone has psychological illness, normal people follow the law of reflection. You're nice to them, they will be nice to you. And the ladies that are on my Emmett group have known many examples where that's happened to themselves, where they've had family members they haven't spoken to for years, and the minute they changed the dynamic and went to the wedding or contributed to a Friday night or did something, suddenly the relationship is on the mend. And the beautiful thing about this is you can be proactive. You don't have to wait. As Nike says, just do it. Just go first. Don't wait. Just do it. You do the right thing, it will be reflected back. Sometimes it won't be, but that's not the ultimate reason why you do it. So it's very important to be giving and not demanding, because when you demand love, you will love me, you will give to me, you will buy for me. What does it do? The other person goes, whoa, I don't like the way you're talking to me. I'm not talking to you. I'm not giving you what you want. It has the opposite effect. Many years ago, I don't know if she's at the share today, I had someone in my share, and she told me that someone came to her at work, and she said to her, I've had enough of my husband. I've decided to change the locks. When he comes home tonight, he's not getting in. So this person turned around and she told me afterwards, she said, I'll tell you what Renee Mill would say. Renee would say, book a beautiful restaurant, get dressed up, and when your husband comes home, surprise him with a wonderful date. And she took up this woman's, I nearly slipped her name, took up her advice, and she came the next day beaming from ear to ear. She didn't really want to get rid of her husband. And just by that true story, I don't even know who the person was, it changes your life. Just give, it will come back to you. Sometimes it doesn't come back immediately. Persevere, practice, repetition, give, it comes back to you. Now, when you feel anxious or endangered, know that the fear is not based on a present reality. Do something which requires calm, controlled movements, such as breathing slowly or singing an uplifting song. So if you feel yourself starting to panic, do something slow. Walk slowly or sing a song. Do something where it will enable you to be calm and controlled. Don't let the panic take over, but do something that's opposite. Singing is an amazing thing. And I'm finding now during this time, there's so many videos going around of people joining in and people singing. It's an incredible thing. And in fact, I don't know if she's listening, but I have her permission. I've spoken to my daughter Shayna, and I'm going to ask everybody if they're interested. She's going to be running a choir. I saw a thing called couch choir, where somebody who was running a choir is now doing it via Zoom. So we're going to set up a group where people can join in. We're going to have fun 1 hour a week. We're going to learn a new skill. I've never really sung as part of a choir, so I'm keen to learn it. But it's about doing something positive where we can actually use an hour, again, much better to use our time while we're working at home and doing this in a positive way. But you don't have to wait for us. Sing, dance, move around, listen to music. All these things will help you. The more you feel out of control, the more anxious you will be. Therefore, any act of control will lessen your anxiety, even if you're involved in an event over which you have little or no power, which is what we are in. So what you need to know, it's again, we can't change the external, but any act of control will lessen your anxiety because you will feel masterful. You will feel masterful of your small world, and it will build your self-esteem. The best cure for many types of depression is disciplined activity. So now we know, for example, that when people have depression, people who start exercising, a moderate amount of exercise often is as effective for mild depression as antidepressants. But again, as I said, with the Black Dog timetable, it's about getting up in the morning, exercising, having discipline, and having routine. I have to say, again, in my analytic days, if anyone had ever told me that I would spend therapy sessions helping people organize their time, helping people plan better, helping people run more efficient lives, I would have again smirked at that. But again, as I said, something very small can turn a person's life around. So when you have disciplined activity, when people are planning meals, planning exercise, planning activities with their kids, it calms you down. There's something really soothing about routines. They don't have to be rigid routines. But when you wake up every day, and a lot of people are doing this now, and they go, oh, what am I going to do today? How am I going to fill my day? What should I do? Don't do that. Sit down. Sunday night's a great time after the shiur. Have a calendar and just work out what you're going to do every day. Work out how you're going to do it. So for example, something simple as getting up in the morning, if you daven or you meditate, having a bit of exercise, doesn't have to be hardcore, eating your breakfast, doing a craft, eating lunch, doing a social group. You sort of know what you're going to do. You don't wake up with this panic of what am I going to do? And then you can grow into it, and you can change it as you like. But it's really, really helpful that every day being a shock and a surprise and trying to suddenly cram things in. Very good to know what you're going to do, and it is very good to do things around the same time. So I'll just actually talk a little bit about this because we have a biological rhythm. So when you do a lot of things at the same time, you go into the zone. It's not the only way. If you want to exercise, put on exercise clothing. If you want to study in one particular place. Don't study on your bed, as an example. Make a little area that's your study area. These things help you to concentrate or to get into the exercise mood. That's why if you're going out, dress up. You feel very different. Let's face it, when you get your makeup done and you put on a beautiful dress, you feel very different than when you go out in an old tracksuit. How outside in, how you dress affects how you feel. So getting up during this time, even if you're working at home or you're not working, get up. If you normally shower in the morning, shower, get dressed. If you normally wear makeup, put on makeup and jewelry, because it'll put you into this is normal life. If you're going to mess around in an old tracksuit or pajamas and no makeup, it will affect your mood. All these outside in things affect you. So in the path of the just, it says, just as zeal can result from enthusiasm, so enthusiasm can create zeal. If you move quickly, that's what zeal is. If you can move quickly, it'll arise in you an inner joy. But if you're sluggish in your limbs, the movement of your spirit will die and be extinguished. You want to be enthusiastic. If something is offered to you, As I saw someone immediately on the chat said, I'd love a choir. Jump in. Grab that moment. That's what we call being zealous. If a mitzvah comes your way, grab that mitzvah. If someone asks you for help, don't go, oh, again, that was coming to me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to do the mitzvah. I'm going to do it straight away. When you do things quickly, it gives you more enthusiasm. It helps your mood. It helps you get through things. When you drag yourself and you're lethargic, it will affect your mood, and often you don't get it done, which will lower your self-esteem. So this concept of being zealous, we call it zrizus in Hebrew, is a very important thing. And we said, I don't have the quote in front of me, but at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, it says, wake up in the morning, jump out of bed, be bold as a lion, swift as an eagle, but it's about getting up in the morning and rushing to do mitzvahs. So as I said to you in the very first year of the series, our purpose here is to serve Hashem, whether it's to do it at work or to do it at home, whether it's to do it when the world is well or when there's corona, doesn't matter. As Jews, our service never changes. And we need to wake up in the morning, jump out of bed, and do the opportunities that come your way, the mitzvahs that come your way, with enthusiasm and with zealousness, because everything you're given or you're asked to do is an opportunity to do a mitzvah. It's very, very important. We know that getting up straight away is important. If you stay in bed, it's actually the worst thing you can do. So if you set a wake-up time at 7 o'clock, when you wake up, even if you don't feel like it, put your legs on the floor and force yourself to stand up. Sleeping in does not help your mood, makes you feel worse. You wake up groggy. And the more you put it off, the more your Yetzer Hara comes and says, don't get up. Rabbi Tatz gives us a share. He's talking to men about davening, and I can't remember the Hebrew words, but I remember he spoke about a difference, and the one is the letter Hey, has a little gap. He says, when a man has to wake up for shul in the morning at 6 o'clock, there's a moment where there's a gap. And if he doesn't jump out of bed in the gap, jumps the Yetzer Hara that says, you don't have to go to shul. You're tired. You work hard. Not everyone goes to shul. Don't be so frum, all kinds of things, and you don't go. And afterwards, you feel horrible. You feel you've let yourself down. You hate yourself. And we're all the same. There's a gap. When we have the opportunity to do something and we don't do it, then the little voice comes in and goes, you're always giving. You give enough. Why would you give to her? She's always taking. We all have the stuff, and then we don't do it. So the minute you have the opportunity, jump in with zealousness. Jump out of bed in the morning, grateful, modeh ani, I have this day to do mitzvahs. And maybe today I have to do mitzvahs at home because I can't work at work, but that's okay. I have these opportunities and I'm going to do it with zeal. So what they're talking about here, it's not only about action, positive muscular acts, but doing it with zealousness, with excitement, with enthusiasm. They say one of the things about Abraham, he got up in the morning early to go and shecht his son. He did it with excitement. What about, not about killing his son, but about serving Hashem. That is a model for us. Jump into life. When you move your body quickly and you're zealous, that will help your mood. That will lower your anxiety. That will increase your self-esteem because you'll actually do what you want to do. There was once a famous general who seemed to be the epitome of self-confidence. Only after his death was it revealed in his memoirs that he waged an inner battle as fierce as the outer ones he fought. He wrote that when he would experience anxiety, he would tell himself, tremble, fool, but walk on. So too, we must often walk on, overcoming shyness, inertia, anxiety, and uncertainty. By doing the difficult will seem less formidable. So this is a very important thing because often we think that brave people, don't feel fear. They're brave all the time, and that's absolutely not true. Any famous people who are brave will tell you that they were often on the battlefield or whatever they were facing and they were afraid. But like the song I sort of told you about in the beginning, you just face it. You do it. So that is the idea that you need to be absolutely sure that doesn't matter what you feel, do the right thing. You need to be brave, do the brave thing. And we all have done it. You know, if you actually reflect, this is not new. Any of us that have had the good fortune of having children know that we act brave sometimes when we don't feel brave. I know myself that I remember having different horrible insects come into the house that I was petrified on, but I was alone with my kids. I couldn't jump on this chair and scream. So I acted brave and I had all kinds of methods, broomsticks and whatever, but I had to do it. And then I've seen my kids do the same. They were the ones that were petrified, but now they've got kids, they have to be brave. So we all do it. We all do what we have to do. And so when we're alone at home, there's more opportunity to think, I can't do it. But as this famous general said, tremble, fool, but walk on. And acceptance and commitment therapy talks about this. You have a feeling, but you have a choice point to act in alignment with your values. Even though you're trembling, you still act brave, you still act kind, you still act self-disciplined, you still talk in a calm voice. The feeling is there, but you don't fuse with it. You don't let it own you. You don't let it bully you. You still act in the correct way that you want to correct. Now, you may have a self-centered passion to avoid putting forth the effort to do an act of chesed, or to restrain the impulse to criticize. Now, we all have different impulses, and yours might be one where you know you shouldn't criticize, but you can't hold back. Now, the idea is to restrain yourself to do Hashem's will. And that's why I said sometimes the way I find it's very helpful is to think someone in the room. It's easier to visualize someone you respect being in the room. But really, if you can visualize that Hashem is watching you at all times, that it's important to restrain yourself and act in Hashem's will. Only after you've done what is right, you'll feel the inner glow of strength, which overcomes your baser desires. And again, people who've done my groups know that the beginning you feel, no, it's not fair, I should, and then one day you go, you know what, I felt so good that I didn't criticize. I feel so good that I was loving to my son, who I would felt in the past I would have rather just, murdered him or whatever I would have done. You feel good because you're doing the right thing. The muscles teach your brain that you have the power to control yourself, that you are not as weak or incompetent as you thought, and that you're capable of growth. I'm going to read that again because this is core. The muscles teach the brain that you have the power to control yourself, that you are not as weak or incompetent as you thought, and that you're capable of growth. So this is important because often people tell me I can't control myself. I was born like this, it's my personality, my family never showed me how to do it, I'm weaker than other people, millions of excuses. The Torah says that you have the power to control yourself. The Torah wouldn't ask you to do anything you're not capable of doing. Doesn't mean it's easy. And again, it's easier for some than others, depending what your thing is. But you do have the power. And each time you do something and you go, wow, I did it, it strengthens your belief I can change. I'm not weak. I'm not incompetent. I just need to do the action and keep practicing it, and I will become that way. So if I'm a shouter at home and I start talking in a whisper and I keep whispering, sooner or later, I will stop shouting. I don't have to control myself. I don't have to white knuckle it. I don't have to have the willpower. I just have to change my behavior, practice and repeat it, and I will become that person. Any act of self-discipline will promote self-esteem and will be strengthening as long as it's done from a conscious choice and not from a compulsion or blind habit. So if you do it because you're compelled and you have OCD, that's not a healthy way. But if you're choosing to change something, and this is the other thing, there's a lot of research now. There's a very good TED talk about the power of habit, that habit rewires your brain. And a lot of the research now is we don't use the word willpower. So even if you go onto any nutritionist website, very rarely do they use, I don't even know anymore, like you've got to have willpower to stick to your diet. This is what you will hear. Change one thing in your diet, just one. And whatever your thing is, you're crazy about sugar in your tea, they'll say, instead of having 2 teaspoons of sugar in your tea, go down to 1. Do that for a few weeks till it's second nature. Now change another thing. Maybe that'll be no sugar at all in your tea, or maybe it'll be a different breakfast. Because we know the reason diets don't work is this idea of having the willpower to be completely different all at once doesn't work. You change one thing at a time, and when that becomes second nature, you change another thing. So whatever it is, if you're self-critical or you have inadequate thoughts, or you don't like to be generous, or you're lazy in the morning, just change one thing. Don't think, oh, I've got to jump up in the morning and zoom out the room. Just think about, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the alarm, and as soon as the alarm comes, I'm going to sit up. That's all I'm going to do. And just get used to doing that. And when you've got used to that, you're going to go, okay, now I'm used to that. Now what's the next thing? I'm going to not only sit up, I'm going to go for a short walk. And don't make it an onerous walk. You just go for a 10-minute walk into the sunshine, because the sunshine in the morning is good for your melatonin. So I keep repeating it. So this is the idea, that think about one thing that you can change, and you change it. And as you do, in emic language, you say, I endorse myself. Every little growth you make, you need to pat yourself on the back. No one else is going to, and no one even knows. No one even knows. I always give the example, someone goes and says, I love sweet things. So when in the old days, you'd go to a wedding and there'd be wonderful desserts. And someone normally would have 3 chocolate eclairs, and they only have 2. Now, someone else watching thinks, oh my God, 2. She's thinking, well done. I normally have 3, but I've grown. I'm only having 2. No one knows what struggles you're going through. No one knows how difficult it was for you to cut back that 1 chocolate. But if you do it, you need to endorse yourself. And we don't need external praise. And it's not praise, it's recognizing your growth, which also increases sense of mastery. So don't rely on anybody else, but notice any small growth, capture it. Look what I just did differently. That showed I can do this, or I am improving. There's a concept we talk about, I'm permanently under renovation. We never get there. We're always growing and changing. Till the day we die, doesn't matter how old we look or what we're doing, we have the capacity to change and grow, and we're always changing and growing. So notice any small growth, pat yourself on the back. I endorse myself for that growth. In the past, I would have had 3 eclairs. This time I only had 2. In the past, I would have stayed in bed till 8. Today, I sat up at 7 o'clock. In the past, I would have done no exercise. Today, I walked to my front garden and back. It's not what you actually do. It's the growth. I would have done this, but I'm noticing I'm growing. So this is very important. And with actions, it's quite easy to measure. Feelings are harder to measure, but I didn't get up before, and now I'm getting up. I used to eat more, and now I'm eating less. Whatever it is, I used to criticize all day, and I only criticize half a day. Whatever it is that you're doing different, notice what you're doing and endorse yourself. So I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 examples from her book. I had a nasty run-in with a neighbor. The last thing I wanted to do was go over and make peace, but I did it anyway. It was a real effort for me to push my feet forward and talk calmly, even though I felt cowardly inside. Even though the neighbor responded with hostility, I felt that I'd won an inner victory. And why this is a good example is it didn't turn out well. The neighbor was still hostile, but she tried to make peace. And we always endorse for effort, not success. I'll just give you 1 more. My response is to cry a lot and give in to hostility whenever I feel depressed or overwhelmed. But when I started to get lowered feelings last week, I decided that I was going to smile a lot and avoid the temptation to make everyone suffer along with me. I kept my inner distress to myself and was extra nice to everyone, even though it felt insincere at times. The result was that I began to feel stronger and to regain my self-respect. The down was over more quickly than usual. I want to pick up the smile thing because there's a famous story, and I can't remember the name of the rabbi, but it's a true story about this rabbi who was in the Holocaust, and he was in a camp, and every morning he would walk around and greet everybody with a smile. And he walked over to someone one day and he said, "Good morning," and he tried to cheer him up, and the person said to him, "You know what? It's easy for you. You've got an optimistic personality, but I don't, and I can't smile every day. So please, kind of leave me alone." So this rabbi said, "No, no, no, you've got it wrong. It's not easy for me." He said, "But a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to change. So what I did is every morning I would look in my bathroom mirror and I would put a smile on my face. I'd practice the smile. And then I would walk out, and on my way to shul, I would greet everybody. And when I got to shul, I would greet everybody with a smile. It took me 2 years, but after 2 years, it became a habit. It's only that I did that now I'm in these circumstances that I can keep smiling and greeting everyone. But don't think I was born like this. I changed myself. So this smiling is an incredibly important thing, that you can practice a way of being that you can become that person. And it doesn't matter what your motives are. If it's the right thing, it will be for the right motives. But even if it's not, as I said, from a Torah point of view, action is the most important thing. The famous story of someone who went and said, "I don't really like Tisha B'Av and I don't really feel anything." And the rabbi said, "You just have to fast. Be very nice if you feel it and you want to cry, but that doesn't matter. The mitzvah is to fast." All these things, it doesn't matter. It would be better. There's an ideal, but action is much, much more important. Now, it doesn't have to be big action. Don't underestimate the power of anything. So I'll tell you another story about a smile, and this I heard in the name of the wife of the Vilna Gaon. She was married to, very, very special rabbi, famous rabbi, and so I presume she was quite special too. And she had a best friend, and they were talking about what happens after you die, as people do, as best friends chat. What do you think happens after you die? And they made a promise to each other that whoever dies first is going to come back and tell the other one what's going on up there. The friend dies first. The friend dies first. And she comes back after about a week, because it's actually hard for a soul to come back, but she came back because she had promised in a dream. And she said to the Vilna Gaon's wife, she said, "I want to tell you what I discovered up there. Do you remember we once went to a function and there was someone who's standing all on their own? And even though you were the great rabbi's wife, you walked over to her and you greeted her and you smiled at her and you asked her how she was." She said, "Well, I want you to know the immeasurable joy that brought to the heavens and the immeasurable merit it's going to bring to you. But it changed things up here for everybody. Just a smile." So these are the kind of things, and we're talking about it a lot now. Smile at people. If you're out walking, I know you're distancing. I noticed the other day, yes, it's fine, but just smile. We're all going through it. Pick up the phone and phone people. And I'm talking to myself because I'm not a great chatter. But pick up the phone. Put on a smile. Ask people how they're doing, even if you don't feel like it. You might come to feel like it. If you don't, doesn't matter. But you never know what it does for people. The Are You Okay Day, such a simple thing. Someone who lost a family member through suicide. Just saying, "Are you okay?" can stop a person killing themselves. Because if you see someone looking down, you don't have to be a therapist. You don't have to dig deep, but just going, I notice, I see you. Are you okay? Can turn people around. There was a story about the man at the Gap in Sydney who saved a lot of people because he saw people walking there and he would just walk up to people and say, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And they would come into his flat and have a cup of tea, and they spoke afterwards and said yes, they were going to jump. It's that simple. Just look around you and go, what can I do for you? What can I give to you? And the more you give, the better you will feel. Not that that's a reason to do it, But don't be a waiter. Don't wait for people to give to you. Give up that way of being. It's not a Jewish way. There's another famous story about a rabbi who was very active in all kinds of things. Busy, helping people, helping his congregation, learning Torah, doing everything. And when he was ill, one of his students, also talking about death, said to him, well, I'm sure you're going to go to Gan Eden. And he said, actually, I don't know. So they said, what do you mean? You're a tzaddik, of course you. He said, no, I'm just saying I've never ever thought about it. I don't function in this world thinking about, oh, this is going to give me a brownie point and this is going to get me into heaven. I just do. So we have an opportunity now to just do. And I know a lot of us are at home and we have to do it differently. But actually, I have found, and maybe you have, there's more time to just do. Whatever it is that you can do, but it's about also the atmosphere you want in your home. How do you want to talk to the people? What can you learn? What skills can you learn during this time? What can you do? What action can you take? But make sure that you're thinking right, and make sure you're doing enough positive muscular acts that you're not going to sink into a depression, that you're not going to get anxious. Limit the activities you're doing that are making you feel worse. Even that is an action. Making a decision to put up a boundary. People who make you feel stressed, don't talk to them too much. You can smile, you can share a story with them, you can be positive. I'm not saying don't have contact with them, but if they get too negative, put up a boundary. You have to go. Limit the conversation to something that's healthy for both of you, because it's not helping them either to go on and on and on. It's not healthy to go down this negative route of what's going on. It is going on, but thinking about it isn't going to change, except, and this is another action, prayer. So as Jews, we can pray. We can say Psalms, Tehillim for people who are ill. We've got extra time now to pray every morning, to pray to Hashem, to make things better, to pray to Hashem, to bring the Geula, to bring Mashiach. Because when Mashiach comes, everything comes with that package, which is a good way to spend the last few minutes because it has been Pesach. And I want to tie up a few of the points with Pesach. Pesach isn't over, we're in Moed. Good Moed, everybody. One of the things that we learn about matzah is about simple faith. Now, faith is what makes us different to animals. Bread is what makes us different to animals. Animals can eat meat and fruit and vegetables just like we do. But bread is something that humans make. And matzah is the lowest form of bread. It doesn't need much. It's flour and water. It's quickly baked. It's the lowest form. So in a way, it's the lowest form, not of humanity, but of faith, of how we can think about the world. It's a simple faith that took us out of Egypt. As I said before, the Jews didn't know where they were going to, but they had simple faith that it had been promised to them and they were going to be redeemed. And so whatever they had to do, whether it was walking around, was it with a sheep or a cow, I can't remember the Korban Pesach, I think it was a sheep. And if they had to put blood on their doorpost, whatever they did, they did. They just did it. I don't think they understood what was going on. They didn't. But they had that simple faith and belief that Hashem was going to take them out. And that's the simple belief we have to have. There's a famous story of Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev after his Seder. He thought he'd ran a really, really good Seder. And after the Seder, Hashem spoke to him, I don't exactly know how, and said to him, Moshe's Seder was much better. So he was very upset. He wanted to find out what was Moshe's Seder. And he went, and Moshe was actually a drunk. And he said, Moshe, tell me about your Seder. And Moshe said, I'm so ashamed. I'm so embarrassed. He said, no, please tell me. He said, look, actually, I'm a drunk. I'm addicted to whiskey. And I knew I couldn't drink whiskey on Pesach. So the night before, I drank nonstop, like a camel. I wanted to reserve enough. And what happened was as soon as I couldn't eat chametz, I passed out. And at night, my wife kept waking me up and said, Moshe, We need a Seder. Moshe, we've got children. Moshe, you have to do something. And eventually at the last minute, I dragged myself up and I said to my children, I'm sorry that I'm a drunk and I'm not going to do this again. I'm not a very learned man, but I want to tell you this. God promised the Jews that he would take them out of Egypt, and he did. And he's promised us that he's going to take us out of Golis, and we believe that he will. And that was how beautiful Moshe Seder was. That simple belief in Geula. And that's what we need to know. This Pesach, it's still Pesach, we need to believe in Geula. We are going to have on Tuesday night is going to be what's called the crossing of the Red Sea. And the significance of the crossing of the Red Sea is that we have access to spirituality. One of the things about the sea splitting is not just that the sea parted, but that you could see what was in the sea, and the sea, the Mayim, is a reflection of Shamayim, of the heavens. Just like there are heavenly beings, the sea reflects all kinds of spiritual beings. So when they crossed the sea, they were in an incredible spiritual level to see godliness, to see what you've heard me say a million times, beyond nature, to see how godly the world is. So everybody on Tuesday night to really be aware of this, whatever's blocking you from not seeing beyond nature, whatever's blocking you from trying to attach to what's above the sun, the revelations that night are there for you to leap over, to be aware of what the blocks are. What is it that stops you from actually going, nature's just a cover, but really Hashem is everything and Hashem is everywhere. And he is running and orchestrating this pandemic, and he has promised us redemption. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm happy to take a few questions. Okay, the only one is, I need help with planning. Okay. Please private message me. I'm going to unmute. Okay. If anyone has a question, I'm happy if you just put up.
Great cheer, Ren.
Thank you. Questions? I'm very happy for everybody or anybody to send me a private message. The group is not for people to interact. It's just to I'm going to keep it very simple about notifying when the show is and putting it on me. But please, if you have a question or something, I'm very happy for you to private message me. Thank you all for your support. Please God, I'll see you all next week when we've gone through the Red Sea. Pesach will be over, but we will continue this year.
Thank
Good
you,
night, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Rena. That was
Pleasure.
Thank you.